Alright, what's up, y'all? You know, Little Red the guitar here went under the knife, literally. Yesterday, I did quite the adjustment on Little Red the guitar here, my Johnson JG610R, 3/4 size with nylon strings, because I'm Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. Welcome. And I do crazy things with nylon strings. But this is In the Image Clothing Company podcast, episode 161, titled Company for Company's Sake. Maybe we get rid of the S. Company for company's sake. Yes, that's actually what it is. We'll get into this, okay? This is where we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, aka the truth of all things. We're all just human beings placed on the same earth with one God. We discuss him as he says that he is. We don't do it perfect, but we do it. I have a good time here. I discuss things pretty thoroughly. I get blunt, bold, raw, real, as we are under In the Image Clothing Company. And it's fun. It's cool. You know, some good insights on life. Yeah, are documented here. 160 times we've done this before this one. So today's the 29th of September, 2025. I'll do it as I do, right? Talk about each of the four sides of In the Image Clothing Company. We'll talk about where clothing sits, and then we'll get into the discussion of this podcast episode titled What I Said. Company for company's sake. But let me address little Red the guitar here. He's so much easier to play. Anyway, yeah, I took a knife and just kind of cut little slots into the bridge pin holes, like closer to the center. Like take the bass 3 and I cut the slots closer to the inside, or like the center of the actual neck of the guitar. And then, you know, the same with the treble strings toward the center of those little holes where the bridge pins go in. I actually made it so the strings aren't pulling straight out from the bridge pin holes. They're like pulling inward a little bit. And that's what I show a lot when I show the sizing and setup of guitar. But yeah, I did that. And I also made the saddle even more even, okay, from bass to treble side. It was just slightly higher on the bass side than I wanted it to be. Ideally, it's completely even across with that nice rounding radius to the saddle, the frets, and the nut, the top, right? But he's so much better. So that's where we'll start when we talk about the other three sides, besides this fourth, of In the Image Clothing Company. Music. In the Image Clothing Company music, a lot of what I do is show the sizing and setup of guitars to not alter the body, keeping things like that neutral wrist straight out from the pinky finger while we play guitars, you know, by having them the correct size and set up well as well. So yeah, I make a lot of music, place it there on In the Image Clothing Company music. I do lyricism. I'm really good with words and working words and rhyming things off the top type of stuff, right? Freestyles. Metronome Madness is what I actually call that. We're on episode 28 of Metronome Madness, as of the last one that I did. So a lot of fun stuff with music, geared around the gospel of Jesus Christ with the messages, and it's really, really great, actually. You know, I get deep with music. I approach music really authentically, but weirdly, compared to the norm in society nowadays. Definitely, I have a very unique style, if you will, when it comes to music. And then we've got another fourth of us. We'll talk about the main side. The main side of In the Image Clothing Company is where we allow the human body to work. As it says, it's our main side. That's what we do. Really, that's what founded In the Image Clothing Company. The human body has a center line. The sternum, the spine, the trachea, the nose, and the jaw. The jaw naturally stabilizing the entire body on Earth's gravity. We have to mesh the body's center line with Earth's center of gravity. But we place clothing on us. So clothing has to at least do these three things here. And really, these are the three things: stay centered, fit correct, where I'll discuss here in a minute, and be made from 100% natural materials. The human body's only natural. Okay, we talk about everything we do as a human being: eating, standing, walking, sitting, breathing, hydration, sleeping, everything, because we just discussed the anatomy of the human body in depth. And stretch within clothing didn't even exist decades back from today's date, and then ever before then. And it goes the opposite direction of the only way that muscles could ever work. Musculature, yikes, in the body only contracts. My back's kind of like caught right now a little bit. A lot of adjustments in my own body, around this time period that you can see under what we document under In the Image Clothing Company's content. Okay, the gift of video. But yeah, the neutral, like the wrist that I was discussing with guitars, there is a neutral position to every joint in the body. And it needs to reside in that, and there you go. We can only allow it. You can't train the body to do anything when there's just a neutral with motion outside of that, like a neutral to internal versus external rotation in parts of the body. So there you go, okay? A lot of free modifications in clothing. Good clothing, always available on InTheImageClothingCompany.com. And yeah, that's, a lot of what we do. We discuss the anatomy of the human body, though, in ways where we just give discussions on how the body works, too. Getting out of chronic patterning and scar tissue is really what we do. Through ropes introduced to the body, potentially rotating the body and damaging it greatly. Shoelaces and drawstrings, anything placed around the body like that. Imbalanced and oversized clothing, right, really damages the body. And yeah, man, we just talk about it as it is. So there you go. Another fourth of us, the last one to mention here. In the Image Clothing Company, poodles. We specialize in purebred standard poodles. We breed them properly, registering them under the American Kennel Club, and we advocate for doing these things, for being a good owner of dogs, and how to. We give information that applies to all dogs, not just poodles, but poodle parade events specifically for purebred poodles or poodle mixes of any size. You can bring them to the state of Utah here. That's something we'll have a lot of. Always having a good time in nature, the mountains, at parks, in water areas. Just hanging out is a big part of it, but also giving a lot of information on what we do, which is letting dogs stay natural. Same thing as what we do for the human body under the main side of In the Image Clothing Company that we phrase allowing the body to work. In a modern man-made world, there's a lot that can alter any living thing on this planet. And we just discuss those things and how to get down to the bottom of, being able to live well. Yeah. Okay. So there you go. Yeah. A lot with poodles, poodle products, as well as human being clothing, staying centered when it comes to collars, leashes, harnesses. We talk about a lot of these things, interacting with our dogs so we don't get altered when we're doing things like holding leashes, so the dog doesn't get pulled on and altered through leashes, or dog tags on collars, similar things, like that. We really discuss. So a lot of big things, okay? Poodle puppies too, yeah. Fill out an application if and when, right? You ever want to end up with one of our puppies when the litters are available. Pretty strict screening process. Doing things properly. We keep less dogs in shelters and more dogs at homes, and we do a lot of good stuff. So Clothing for everybody has to sit in the same location. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, if you're tall or short, if you're skinny or fat, any age from any part of the earth or any time period to ever be, you are just a human being. And our pants need to be entirely above our hips at what's called our natural waist. That's above our hips but below our lowest ribs, where we actually bend side to side at our spine. With our pants there, we don't restrict our hips and our body can stay activated, okay? With them slightly higher in the front than the rear for the waistband angle, because that's the neutral position our body will be in if we don't have any pants on our bodies, right? And so placing pants on, it needs to be in the same location that the body would just naturally work. Same with tops. The tops that we have seams on top of our shoulders. They need to sit evenly behind the peak of our shoulders. Our shoulders only ever work behind our head, and our shoulders follow shoulder seams. The edge seams of our tops should just be right at the very edges of our shoulders, where the joint of the top material and the sleeve material is, meshing with the joint of the bones of the body. The collarbone and the scapula, or the clavicle and the shoulder blade, same thing, worded differently. Two different bones here in the torso, meeting the humerus, which is the upper arm bone, right? Ideally right at the same location, as close as we can get to where those shoulder seams are. Now, two things we have as prerequisites under In the Image Clothing Company to not alter the body. Firstly, weaving ropes across the top of our feet is all we're doing when it comes to shoelaces. There's only one way we can shape a weave of a rope, the way the human feet are mechanically going to work, with all the tendons, muscles, ligaments, and bones in there, gripping arches inward, opposing the center line of our bodies and keeping us vertical on Earth's gravity, then traveling up through our entire body with what's going on at the feet being our foundation. Yeah, In the Image Clothing Company's shoelace technique is what we title that. Then there's no alteration to the feet, but we also tie shoes just to keep them on. We have to tie shoes evenly over toward the center line on both sides of the body. I was 24 years old until I started tying my shoes evenly, and that causes a rotation in balanced knots left to right in the feet through the whole body to the tip of the head and the tips of the fingers. Secondly, to shoelacing, we remove all tags from clothing as our other prerequisite. Anywhere tags are placed in clothing, they're either causing a physical gap, changing the body's only working position, and or just not allowing musculature to activate, and then the body's trying to do compensation for things that can't fully work. But everything in the body has a role to play, and it can't make up for something else. Okay, so here we are. Episode 161 of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast. Yeah, this title is cool, man. I like this. I thought of this a couple weeks ago. Company for company's sake. We'll get into it because a lot of times people in life don't like to be alone. We're human beings. We're wired for connection, right? God created us in his image, in the image of Jesus Christ is how and who we are created by and through. And that's where 3 of the 5 words of our company name come from, In the Image Clothing Company. So, we're designed by God to be together as people, and have communities, have help one to another, right? Yeah, and there's a lot that comes with that. And so a lot of times people will feel very lonely, and what sometimes comes from that that's very unhealthy is just being around people for the sake of being around people. And not being around very good people, but at least you're not alone, right? That's what we can say here as part of what I'm explaining with, company for company's sake. Like, I'm around people just because I don't want to be alone, maybe in a hypothetical situation, right? although the people I'm around, even though, yeah, they're people, they're not the best. I don't feel so good around them, maybe we say, in these hypothetical situations, or whatever it comes to being. It's just not quite ideal in moments, right? But people will be around people just for the sake of being around people, okay? And this is not good because we need to be around the best people we can. There's a scripture in scripture, right? We talk about the Book of Mormon, we talk about the Holy Bible, true doctrine of Jesus Christ, our God himself. Here, under In the Image Clothing Company podcast, as disciples of Jesus Christ, that's what we do, is we follow scripture. We do what that episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast is titled, which is read the word of God, and so we know who God is. And there is a scripture that says, when 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, this is Jesus Christ speaking, there will I be in the midst of them also. If that's slightly paraphrased, okay, but that's what it says, right? Meaning, disciples of Jesus Christ or followers of Jesus Christ, us as people trying to follow God, because that's what the point of life is getting closer to Jesus Christ and everything that we can do throughout our whole life. When we're gathered together as people doing that, Jesus Christ will be in the midst, that's a hard word to say it sometimes, midst of them also. M-I-D-S-T, is that how you spell that? Maybe? Meaning he'll be there as well. Yeah. So, when you're around things that aren't so good, no matter how good you are, it's hard to not have those things influence you. When you're around people who aren't, hear this correct, doing good things, there's not really necessarily just bad people or good people. There's people who are doing what they can to do good things, and people who don't really care all that much and will do things that are not so good, right? When we talk about people, and often I say very harsh things and get after people for doing things, and it's the behavior, whether it's me doing it or somebody else doing it, behaviors are not good. People are people, and we get to choose whether we do good behavior or bad behavior, right? And similar things like that. It's not just the person we're speaking about when we talk about people who aren't doing good things in life. It's what they're choosing to do with their life and who they're choosing to be, in a sense, rather than being their authentic self, trying to be something in times, right? And that's what a lot of times happens when people are around people just for the sake of trying to be around people, is they'll try to be what these people like or what these people are like. And this is what I mean, at least in this part of this, company for company's sake. I don't like these people so much because of the behavior they're doing, because of the lifestyle they're living, but I don't really know who else I'd be around right now, we say in times, maybe, right? But then being around those people, their actions, their behavior, their language that they use, the way they talk about anything, and especially other people, their views toward life, it can all rub off on you. It can. And you can be a very, very strong person and have it just about not affect you, but then you're using a lot of your energy and effort to just do all you can to not let it affect you, right? So a lot of times this happens where people just are around people because, yeah, you know, it's good to have someone there, they might say, And that's not good, actually. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Alone, Not Lonely. And really, we don't ever need to feel lonely. We can be entirely alone and not feel lonely. Not to say that if that's hard for you to do, then you're doing something wrong or you're not doing good enough. But our God is ever present, and we're never without God. But there's times in life where we are without people, whether it's for a few minutes. You leave your kid in the car and go do something for 20 minutes, come back, man, maybe that's not the best example. It'd have to be like a fairly good room temperature in the car and, good airflow so your child doesn't die. That's funny that I chose that as an example. But whatever it is in life, even if we have people who are around, like we're married to somebody, we're not with them always, it's like there's times in life where even if you have somebody you're pretty much always around, there's times when you're going to be alone, you know, definitely. Whether it is just a little bit of time or a day, a few days, a week, months, maybe. Sometimes there's situations where people spend months or even years in complete solitude, completely alone, nobody else around them. Certain occupations or like retreats or trips in life, whatever it is, right? There's reasons, and even just living with nobody else with you, that happens for a lot of people in a lot of situations across our earth. And in these situations, we still have God just as ever present as any other time ever. He's perfect. He's almighty. He's always there. And we don't need to feel lonely if we're actually physically alone with no other people around. But, it's also good to be around people in times and when they're the right people, right? And sometimes it's amazing to be around people. So we need to have this balance where we can and be able to be around people when we need to or when we feel like it's a good thing and needs to happen, That's a hard thing to say because it's on both ends. We also need to be able to be alone when we need to, when we feel like it's a good thing that we need to do. Like whatever I said on the other end, it's the same thing on either end. But at the same time, neither end matters because really all that matters is who we actually are. And who we really are boils down to a son or a daughter, whether you're a man or a woman, of God, of Jesus Christ himself, the one who created you in his image. We're the literal, actual descendants of God. Spirit children, placed in this little earthly existence for a time. For some people, it's about 2 minutes. And they don't make it past right after they were born. Some people, it's 101 years. President Russell M. Nelson of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, he died yesterday. 2 days ago is when it was, Saturday. 2 days before today would have been the 26th, as far as I'm aware, of September 2025. That's quite a long time, 101 years. And anywhere in between there, we're just here on this earth, And while we're here, God is never any less here. We're the ones that decide, right? We draw nearer to him, and then he draws nearer to us. But he stands at the door and knocks, and all we need to do is open it and let him dine with us, right? He'll come in and dine with us, and what that really means is he's always knocking. He's always, as has been said, recently and been kind of like circulating around that I've seen, within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, God is in relentless pursuit of each and every one of us. And, we are the ones that decide if we have a close relationship or not with him. Because he wants it, regardless of what we think we want. And the big thing is, people will seek other people, and I've talked about this quite a lot on In the Image Clothing Company podcast, and lately, some of these past episodes, I've definitely discussed this to a degree as well, but, God is the only one that we need to get our validation from. He's the only one that the validation will matter when we do get it, and that will last, and that will actually help us and make us feel fulfilled and good. But we're human beings, and we're also supposed to communicate with each other. We're supposed to spend time with each other. We're supposed to bear each other's burdens and lift one another up, right? Treat others how we want to be treated. And, he placed us here all together on this earth. But while we're here, we do have the ability to choose to do some pretty terrible things. That's something God gave us, is the ability to choose. Yeah. And, what are you spending your time on? Well, a lot of times that depends on who you're around. And if you're just wanting to have company for company's sake, because you don't want to be alone, and then you choose people to be around that aren't doing things that make you feel good, aren't doing things that lead to a joyful, fulfilled, happy, if you will, lifestyle, then company for company's sake can turn into you feeling pretty miserable and losing your authentic self just to fit in with these people that accept you to have around with them, but you don't really feel so good doing so. There's a lot of people out there, 7 billion plus, as far as I've been told. And I don't know how accurate that really is, but there's a lot of people on this earth at any given time, and more now than probably ever before. I can't speak for before the flood. In times that I just don't know, but I do know, at least the past while, population has been increasing and increasing in number of our earth. Yeah, there's a lot of people. And there's a lot of people you could choose to spend time with. I mean, so many. And so, if I'm going to say, please don't do something right here, please don't spend your time with people just for the sake of having people around if you know those people aren't all that good to be around. And this just happens. It happens all the time. And what it does come from often is people not feeling like they're worthy of spending time around good people. Like good people, with good values and living lives that are loving and helpful toward each other, Christ-like in the best way they can. A lot of times people don't think that they're worth being around those people or worthy to have those people that, as friends. Like they couldn't call those people friends because they're not good enough. They're not able to receive a gift like that. I mean, that's a gift, friendship. That's a gift you give to somebody, is being their friend. In scripture, it says, no greater love hath the man than if he lay down his life for his brother or his friend. Slightly paraphrased, but it's in there. It's in the Holy Bible. It is. Don't take my word for it. Don't believe me, truly. It's in there, though. Something like that. Just about word for word. And the point is, it's a gift we give each other, is being somebody's friend. And a lot of people don't feel worthy of having a friend, Dogs are good friends. Stick around for the poodles under In the Image Clothing Company poodles. But human beings as well, it's really great to be around people who are good people. And well, if you don't feel like you're worthy of being around good people, so you'll just be around some people doing pretty terrible things just kind of for the sake of being around people, right? For the sake of having some company, which is what that means. I guess if people don't really know what that means, listening to this episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, company means like when you're around multiple people, you're in the company of people. I've said it like this. Well, I've worded it like this: in the Image Clothing Company, in the company of some people like a cup of tea. Some warm-hearted people is really what I mean. Tea is warm often, and you drink it. It like warms you inside, and sometimes that's how it feels when you're around really good people. When you're around really good company, if you will. It can warm you and like, make you feel like good. Like you just got a warm hug just because you're around somebody who's kind, loving to the best that they can be, understanding in ways. Good company, right? So, yeah. If you don't feel like you're worthy of that, though, what you'll probably do, what people often do, is what we'll say for sure, what I've done in times, is be around people who I felt I deserved. And if we're not looking at ourselves like we deserve much of anything, then we're going to be around people who are living pretty worthless lives. Without trying to be mean, there's definitely ways you can live just about a completely worthless life. Truly. Yeah. So many terrible things on this earth. There's opposition in all things. And when I say on this earth, I mean in this world, right? The man-made world placed onto God's natural earth, as I say. Yeah, and I've definitely had my fair share of taking part in terrible things. And a lot of that was because I just didn't feel like I deserved to have good things or to feel good or to be around good people because of how I was treated and who I was told that I was in times in my life by people in my life. And through experiences, what I gathered and believed about myself because of what happened in my life that I didn't choose, you know. But this is the big thing. Another thing we didn't choose is that we have a perfectly loving God, our Father in heaven. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Perfect Father. It's one of the first few, like single digit episodes, like way at the beginning of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Like 5, maybe? Number 5, somewhere right around there, give or take. Yeah, 5 or 6 maybe. Shoot. God is our heavenly Father. He's loving, He's perfect, perfectly merciful, perfectly understanding. I talked about a lot of that in that episode where, you know, even if we don't feel like we have good fathers, you know, without being any kind of mean, just speaking it as it is, which is entirely okay to do, I didn't have that great of a father. Okay? I don't have that great of a father as far as an earthly father. And I know that a lot of people are in that same boat. I actually have this new friend, is what we can call him, from Haiti, the country. Haiti, however you say it, wherever you're from, and however it's supposed to be said in the native language. You know, down in Africa. This dude's cool. He's learning English, and he has only been here about a year and 3 months, he said. And he didn't learn any English until he got here. That's when he started learning how to speak English. He spoke Creole. I don't know exactly how you say it. Whatever the native language is there, and that might even be abbreviated for the full name of their language. But you know, he was with me last night. I gave him a ride a couple times yesterday, but you know, we had a little fireside thing in the evening after church at the church building, you know, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I gave him a ride there and then gave him a ride home after. And while we were in the car, he was asking me, you know, we are just kind of having a conversation about our lives, just kind of getting to know each other because I just met him yesterday at church. You know, before I took him home, and then, you know, later in the evening, I went and picked him up again for this fireside. He was talking to me about family. You know, I was talking about his family who's still over, you know, down in Africa. And I told him my parents are divorced because he asked who I live with. And I currently live with my mom and my grandparents, you know, and he said, "Do you love your mom more than your dad?" You know, and it wasn't some kind of like mean thing or some kind of thing, but just, you know, the way he approached the question, I was like, you know, well, yeah, you know, and he was telling me, you know, it's the same for him. And I told him, yeah, there's a lot of people that's the same for, you know, that's just a common thing. And a lot of that is, you know, just the role of a mother versus the role of a father. It's completely different, you know. And that's one big thing in life that I can personally relate to, you know, is not having a good father figure and not a good example of a father personally And a lot of that can lead us to getting into the wrong things in life, having a skewed view on what it means to, wow, we could really get into a whole discussion on that deeply and hit it from a lot of different angles. But yeah, we can get very skewed views of who we are and what we deserve depending on who raised us, who took care of us and maybe not so well growing up, our legal guardians or our actual biological parents, and or whatever it is, even if it's a sibling that raised us or any situation ever, an uncle or an aunt, grandparents, just, friends that became the people who actually raised us. Maybe, maybe anything is the point. There's a lot of situations across the earth that are completely unique, but all so very similar at the same time as we are as human beings. That's how it is. The paradoxical gospel of Jesus Christ. We're just about the exact same thing, but in some ways so completely different from person to person. And yeah, a lot of times we'll think we are a certain person and we'll attach this meaning to who we are, or this belief about who we are and what it is we deserve, the kind of people we deserve to be around, the ways we deserve to be treated. And that's a lot of the time what we will take into choosing who our company is, or who the people that we choose to spend the time around are and what they're like. And so, the big thing with that is, well, then how do we know what we really deserve, who we really deserve to be around, and who we really are, so we know who we will mesh with the most naturally, so we can be authentic and be around people who will let us be us, and then it's just like that warm cup of tea type of company, rather than company for company's sake, and people who kind of leave you feeling worse than if you were to have just been alone, right? Even if you don't want to be alone. And this is where it comes down to it. We ask a lot of these questions as human beings. Who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? What is life? What's the point? Where do I get my worth? And what is it? And who determines it and decides it? And does it change? And how do I know? And who do I trust? And what do I believe? And what is true? And all these questions we can ask in life. Well, what our identity really is something we have to know. And that's something we can dive into. Another one of those things we could hit from all sorts of angles and talk about so deeply. Speak on it in many different ways, have entire podcast episodes that are different but talking about the same thing. Our identity, as in who we really are. And who that is a son or a daughter of God, Jesus Christ, the creator of all things. He's our Father. And that's the thing, is if we just look at our lives here on earth and our upbringing, we might not think that we're deserving of being around good company, because we didn't get treated well growing up. We got told we were all these terrible things growing up, so, well, how could I be anything different, right? This is the person who raised me, and they said I was this. So didn't I just become that? All these terrible things that we get labeled? Well, the answer is no. And the big thing is, you'll never be able to feel worthy of good people fully and honestly with yourself. And you won't feel like you can be authentic there if you don't know who you are. You won't know what authentic means if you don't know who you are. And you have to know that you're a son of God for all you men out there, and you're a daughter of God for all you women out there. Or, boys or girls as well, younger people, not just full-grown adults. Not that that's any different, right? We're commanded to humble ourselves and be like a child, otherwise there's no way we can enter the kingdom of heaven. Seriously. Have faith like a child. Look at the world with awe and wonder, and be pure in heart like children are. Yeah, wow. Yeah, right. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it, but yeah, children are pure to the degree that they are. We're human beings, but right? That's why we don't get baptized within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints until we're 8 years old, because we're not held accountable until we're in the world long enough for it to kind of like try to tell us who we are, which is not who we really are. See what I mean? We get indoctrinated into the world. We're supposed to be in the world, but not of the world. That's what we're commanded by God. And as little children, they're just new to this place. They know who they are. They're authentic because they came from God's presence. And they know that. It's not so far away for them. But as we go through life, it's farther away, really, time-wise, as we get older. When we came from God and got plopped onto this earth he made. It's a beautiful place. The earth. But then we've got this man-made world, They can be rough, and it can tell us who we are, and we can choose to believe it if we want. Or you can choose to not believe in anything. We've got a lot of episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast about that. Believe it or not, don't, right? You don't need to believe in God. Those are 2 episode titles of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. I mean, you believe anything or you don't, and things are still just what they are. You believe God exists or not, he's still there. You can choose to believe whatever you want, but truth is truth. We really get into it. So who's really right then, right? Nobody. Truth is truth. Well, that's an episode title, though, is the point of saying that. So who's really right then? In the Image Clothing Company podcast, that's one of our titles to our episodes. So, yeah, we talk about this often. We don't need to believe in anything, but we can believe that we only deserve a certain amount of whatever it is. A certain type of people who are maybe not so great in their actions and behaviors. And then we'll be around people just for the sake of being around people. And we know we don't want to be there. We feel terrible. There, and then especially after. So what happens after? That's no guarantees, but I've been thinking about an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled something like that. Like, we do things in life, but then even if we don't think they're so bad, it hits us afterward. And sometimes we're with people and we can kind of like get ourselves to have a decent time there, even though we're not. We can kind of like sort of make it seem okay. But then after we sit there and reflect on it, like, man, I was around these people and I shouldn't have been. If I had any kind of say over it, like that, those aren't good people to be around because of the things they're doing, things they say, the lifestyle they live, not because of the people. Everyone can change if they're willing, but they can't change themselves. Jesus Christ is the only one who can, and he's capable of changing anything and everything for the better, right? Yeah. Yep, he's the savior. I mean, that's what that means. He saves us from things that aren't good for us and gives us things that are. He's a giver of perfect gifts, right? If ye being evil can give good gifts, right, he says to us, then how much more perfect of a gift can God give to us? Again, paraphrasing, but scripture. Read it for yourself. Don't believe me. Yeah, read scripture. Read it and read it every day if you can. If you have any access to it, do it. And if you don't have access to it currently, do all you can to do all you can. Which is another hypothetical podcast episode of In the Image Clothing Companies that we might film someday. That's a beautiful way to phrase that. Do all you can to do all you can kind of thing, yeah. In everything in life, that's good. But the point is, that's a good point. Yeah, because everything works together for the good of those that serve God. And a lot of ways that we can serve God is just trying to be a good person. I mean, God's perfect, and so yeah, when we don't feel good in moments like that, we know that that's not a place we should be, around people that are just kind of there because we don't know what else we would do if we were alone, but man, this doesn't feel all that great. And actually, that's me exaggerating how, good it is. It's terrible a lot of the time. The people we're around, the situations we get in with them when they're doing things that we shouldn't be doing and shouldn't be around. Um, Sometimes we downplay it, the effect it has on us, and it kind of eats at us inside. We're kind of dying inside because of the people we're around for the sake of the behavior they're doing and the lifestyle they have, right? Company for company's sake, but very damaging. So this is stuff that's not good, stuff that happens often, and the way out, universally for everybody, is learning who Jesus Christ is. And really how that works, other than just Jesus Christ is the answer to everything. He is God. He's the God of all. He's perfection. So yeah, that's the answer to everything, right? If everything was perfect, there'd be no answers to have. And Jesus Christ is. Okay. He's the great I am. He is. He is perfect. He is everything. He is. He's God. Okay. And so that can be our answer, and that's all we ever need. And it helps us to know who he is a little bit, And you can learn that without having to read scripture. You can pray to God in the name of Jesus Christ, and you'll get personal revelation. He'll talk to you, speak to you personally, is what that means. Through whatever means that is, because he knows you perfectly and how to communicate with you, and he's limitless. And he'll tell you who you are, but that's the point, is, the remedy to knowing who we can be around and who we, even if we can phrase it like this, deserve to be around. We're all equal human beings. But, some people are doing a lot to better their life and all they can and have a really, really proper, if you will, life. And some people are kind of throwing their lives away. And, knowing who God is and that he is perfect love, not only has perfect love for you, but that's what he is the essence of perfection in all senses of what that means. And he's the one that determines that, right? We discuss God as he says that he is. We don't have opinions on God that matter. Opinions don't matter at all in any sense. That's how we can have episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled the things that I was mentioning a minute ago here, a few minutes ago. But like the one titled, So Who's Really Right Then? Well, nobody. God, but he's not us. He doesn't have opinions. So he can't have opinions on what kind of a life is good and then live a bad one and be someone we could be around and not feel so good around. He's perfect. And so us being designed in his image and by him, and we're just literal descendants of God, once we know that, then we can know what we deserve and who we deserve to be around. And it's good people, Christ-like people, disciples of Jesus Christ, followers of God is what that means. And then we can be around people who leave us feeling good after we're with them, and that's the ideal. You've only got this one life here as it is. Ideally, we can spend it with some people who at least don't make us feel worse than if we were alone, right? That's a big thing. Because when you're alone, you can be in the presence of God. So when you're around people, stay in the presence of God. Stand in holy places and be not moved, as the scripture says, right? Yeah, in the presence of God. The Spirit of God dwells within all things except unholy temples. There's a lot of unholy things on this earth that we can do. and every one of us does them to a degree. But those of us who are trying to do more holy things than unholy things, that's where we need to try to be, is around those type of people with a good level of intentionality to their life. Yeah, intentionality, that's a beautiful word. Something that I speak on often, something that I live my life with, and something that's the only way you'll live a good life, a fulfilling life, a purposeful life. Purposeful and intentional are really basically synonyms, basically the same thing in a lot of ways, at least. So yeah, I mean, company for company's sake, it's not a good thing. It's not good, and it's not something you deserve, regardless of what you feel you do deserve or don't. Maybe you don't feel like you deserve anything. Then why would you go out there seeking some good people to be around? Why would they want to be around you if you don't deserve anything? You look at their lives and it seems like they deserve a whole lot. And they're getting good things, even if those things aren't tangible, but it's, joy and peace and fulfillment and laughter and love and connection, communion in the ways that we can say that, right? Community. That's what we call this, it's In the Image Clothing Company. And yeah, that's kind of how you'd phrase that, but it's very intentionally not in the image clothing business, right? It's not a business. It's a company. It's a community where we do all that we can to be, as I say, blunt, bold, raw, real, in the Image Clothing Company. Authentic, just as we are. Because we are only as we are unless we're trying to be something else, which is impossible. It is. There's nothing impossible with our God, but our God designed us as we are. So it's impossible for us to be something besides who we authentically and naturally are, right? That's why the goal is natural under In the Image Clothing Company. Natural, neutral, normal. It's who are you? Be that. Don't try to be anything because you can't. You're only you. And that you meshes with people who are also just them. Because if we're just doing all we can to be authentic, then we're being like God. We're designed by Him. We get down to that universal design, the whole in the image part of things, right? Jesus Christ. And there you go. We're around like-minded, like-hearted, and good-hearted to the degree that we can be as human beings. Human beings, right? So there's a lot that comes with this, and yeah. One big thing is, what I was just saying there is we are In the Image Clothing Company. That's our 5-word name as a whole, as I say, right? Look us up, and that's how you find us. No matter where you ever look to find us, if you can find us there, that's how you'll do it, right? Look up our 5-word name as a whole. And being a company, that's the thing is, there's a lot of companies on the earth. As I was just saying there, we're very specific to be called a company rather than a business. I am not, nor ever will be, a businessman. No, I have a very big problem with that, right? I am not a fan of money. It's not a focus of mine. I don't care about it. God doesn't care about money. It's just a resource, regardless of who wants to have any kind of opinion on it, right? Money changes. There's episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Money Hungry and Power and Poverty. Why is your house so big? We've got episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast talking about money to quite a good degree and extent, right? I talk about it pretty deep, and it's just what it is. It's just a representation of value that we can use to trade for other things in life. And I'm not a businessman, and that's, it gets said, money is the root of all evil. And really, money can lead you to be evil. Money is just what it is, and it's not even a real thing. That's the truth. Look at how money was 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, what it is in current day, and it's just changing always. It's just, whatever we decide to put value on, we can call it money. And it's different across the earth too. The exchange rate is different, and the way it's formed and shaped and displayed, and yeah, all things about it. It's just what it is. It's not a real thing, and that's the truth, actually, legitimately. Yikes! No philosophical idea behind that or opinion. That is the truth. But a lot of people have a company, as in the image clothing company is like a business, if you will, just for the sake of being able to see the difference between what I'm saying now here versus being around people and calling that, being with company, right? Having company around you and having an actual organized company that like does something, um, like legally, if you will. A lot of people will have a company in this sense for company sake. And we could kind of phrase it like this, so you can see what I'm saying. A lot of people will have a company for the sake of business, right? A company for business sake, if you will, for money sake, for profit sake, for gain. And that's definitely not what we are here under In the Image Clothing Company. And that's obvious if you know us, at least a little bit of what we really do here. And a lot of what we do is, similar intent, as I've said many times, to like nonprofit type organizations in helping just the physical lives of human beings, in helping people's connection with God, with sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ, in addition to the first part there, allowing the human body to work. When we discuss the anatomy of something we all have, all designed the same in the image of our creator, right? A human body, even if yours looks quite a bit different or operates in ways different than somebody else, there's just that root human being structure that is there if you are a human being, regardless of what deformity, birth defect, amputation you have personally, right? And so this is what we do. And things for the environment, things for dogs, all kinds, but specializing in standard purebred poodles. We don't have a company here just for the sake of business, right? We don't have a company just for company sake, or just for money sake, for profit sake, or for, any of that. That's not why we're here. And I'm saying it as the founder, is the point. I am the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. Evan Strong is my name. And that's just kind of what I'm making clear right now. And, it's clear, but this is, going along with this episode, giving some deep context on how we can be very intentional in life to have good company around us as far as the people, but then also build and grow good companies, as far as what you could call a business, right? That type of company like this, In the Image Clothing Company. And as I say, every little thing that I do, every video that we make under In the Image Clothing Company, any of the 4 sides, so including every podcast episode under In the Image Clothing Company podcast, every piece of information we ever give to anybody in person, every product we ever put out, anything we ever do in any sense under the name of In the Image Clothing Company, we're here to do it intentionally. And, what I was saying that for though is it's laying a brick in the building of this company. Not only our physical building that we will have, that will be great, where we can ship and sell our products out of, not personally sell them like you walk in there, but ship them out of, and have the team in there, have the poodles in there, but it'll be a physical brick eventually. What it really is, though, everything we ever do under the name In the Image Clothing Company, even if it's very small, is laying a brick in building this to be more of a company, right? More of a community, more of, in every way that we can, some good company to be around, if you will, right? Not a company for company's sake so that we can make some money or be in the business of things like this, right? No. We have a company here for the sake of helping people, deepening understandings of life, and, well, all that we do. And you know what we do if you know what we do. If you don't, well, we've got 161 after this one episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. As of today's date, somewhere around 250 videos on the main site of In the Image Clothing Company, and just all that we do. There's videos on the other two sides of our company as well, and we'll always just be laying bricks, right? Adding little pieces to build this company more. And this is a place where we will do all that we can always, being imperfect human beings, though, right? Very clearly seen, right? That needs to be seen very clear, that we will never be able to do anything perfect just because we're claiming to do things, according to the will of Jesus Christ, our God, to the best that we can is the point, right? We will never be anywhere near perfect at anything we do here. But it's not a company for company's sake. It's a company for the will of God. And that's what I mean is claims, if you will, like that can be a bold thing to take. Like, wow, what are you trying to claim, you prophet? Like, I get what people could, start to think about when I say stuff like that. But I just, it's something to make very clear. Also, not trying to compare or talk down on others who are just in stuff for the money or for the business, because that happens often. But, we're not in it for those reasons. We're in this to really help, to really bring people together, to really bring that company, right? Now we're back to wording it like I was saying earlier, in the company of some people, like a cup of tea. That came out one day, just in a freestyle that I did. Yeah, but that's what we do here. That's what we'll always try to do with whoever we bring on at the team under In the Image Clothing Company. Always just really good people, with a desire to serve God and treat each other to the best that we can, but be real at the same time, authentic. And if you're mad, you're mad and you show it. If you're really excited, be excited and don't be afraid to. The dynamic of a human being, as I say. I mean, these are the type of people that we will always do what we can to bring on board under In the Image Clothing Company's team, right? Our employees, but really, it's not that they're working for us, really. I mean, yeah, kind of, but working with us, right? I mean, we will be in good company here. And if you want to be in a place where you can feel as though you are around good company without actually physically being here with us in the state of Utah, the United States of America, right, where we're based, but you're anywhere on the earth, we have so many videos, and sometimes I'm a harsh speaking person, man, saying very offensive things to many people, and I always will, and I'm not going to hold back, because that's me, authentically, okay? But, we try to do what we can to be good company here. And so you can check out our videos. You can watch the poodle puppies being born. And that's a big thing, In every litter that we can film, that's what I've said since launching the fact that we have a fourth of our company that is In the Image Clothing Company Poodles. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled The Standard Poodle Puppy Breeding Program. If that's not exact word for word, it's something just like that. And we'll do all that we can to film every litter that we can be born. And so you can watch those things and kind of feel like you're there with us in a sense, feel like you're around some company of cute puppies, And all that we do through the gift of video, you can be a part of it without actually physically being here, because not everybody can. And frankly, we wouldn't want everybody to. We don't want poodle parade events to have, like, thousands and thousands of people and dogs necessarily. I mean, I don't want to make that sound like it would be a bad thing, but just meaning, like, not everybody could come to any event we could have under any of the four sides in person, and not everybody can get here to the state of Utah, even if they wanted to. You know, maybe you don't even live in the United States of America, and it's quite the trek. And I almost wouldn't want you to try to go out of your way to come, right? Because that's the whole thing: is don't come for me, come for the poodles to poodle parade events. Come for the information at those events. But then any in the Image Clothing Company event at all, that we ever have in any way that we do, because we're going to get into a lot and do a lot and collaborate with a lot of people who are good company to be around, right? A lot of good companies. I've talked about quite a few companies, without having any kind of compensation from them, just people I know that do good things, and I can just feel it and see the authenticity and the heart behind what they're doing. I've talked about Pure Harmony. Is that what it's titled? The company name? Pure Harmony, yeah? The dog food brand, and I did talk about Zero Shoes, Xero, often, and people that are just good company, people who are doing good things, who, yeah, we'll talk about them just because they're doing good things. And, this is the type of stuff we need to do to be good company, and then we'll be attracting people who will be good company for us to be around as well. Right? So, anyway, I know, at least to most all people, if you know at least a little bit about In the Image Clothing Company, we're here like this, if you will, here in this way, in the way I'm discussing who we are here. But those who maybe don't know much at all about us, and then just for deeper context as well, everything I have said within this episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, that's the goal. That's the point. And a lot of times, it's great to be around people, even if they are pretty harsh, saying things that you maybe don't like all that much and don't agree with. I know I love it. That what I'm saying here, being around people who, even if they are saying things like that I don't agree with, and that kind of like, grind my gears a little bit. I love people who are just bold, just real, right? Being real. An episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast title. That's what we want. That's what it means to be authentic, is just being you. There's no like, how do I become authentic? By like doing something. It's like what we say about allowing the human body to work, letting dogs stay natural. These things on the back end can only happen if you just take things away. You stop restricting the human body or the dogs, and then they just work. You become authentic by taking off all of the behaviors you've added to yourself in this life, right? And so, yeah, just good company. That's what we need to be around. Not company for company's sake, but company coupled with intentionality. If you're going to be around anybody out of an action of either you're just not, or you do something to almost, in a sense, go out of your way to be around people, well, if you're going to do that, do all you can to be around good company. Okay? So, we will, like I'm saying, and just as it is, as it will always be, try to do that as well. Our team, I'm so excited to, yeah. I'm so excited to have our team. People who will be good with the dogs and love doing so. People who can help spread and share all the information and the truth we give under In the Image Clothing Company that applies to everybody across the earth, right? Again, check the phrasing, everybody, right? Physicality wise, the human body, and every dog, except for the things that are poodle specific, like just about everything we talk about under dogs will apply to all dogs, and just being around good people who are excited to change lives and spread this information with the whole earth. Anybody who ever comes in contact within the Image Clothing Company, content or information of any kind, we will always do everything we can to the best of what we can, right? To have good company as far as the people we choose to be working with us under In the Image Clothing Company. And, we'll try to be good company ourselves for other people to want to be a part of our team, and we just have to kind of realize, yeah, kind of. We have to really realize we're just human beings. We go through things we don't know how to deal with. Sometimes the things that make people, and maybe it's even us in times, not all that great of company to be around are actually just things in their life or things in our own lives that we're using as coping mechanisms. And we just don't know how to act better, higher, or holier, closer to a godly type of life in those instances. And it's maybe a feeling of survival, either we do these behaviors because we know that they at least kind of maybe relieve some suffering, right? Which is what we're seeking at times, which isn't good to do, really. I mean, we're supposed to suffer as human beings in this life, so we rely on God. But whatever it is, a lot of the time it's just because we don't know what else to do. We don't know that we deserve to be good company for other people to be around, so we'll do things that make us not be good company, and then other people will get around us because of the behaviors we're doing that aren't good, because they maybe in those moments don't feel like they deserve good company to be around. Do you see what I mean? And so it's the blind leading the blind. And there's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled something about that. Oh, Blind Guides is what it's titled. And, we can't try to tell somebody else how to go somewhere that we don't fully know how to go ourselves. The answer is and only ever can be, and in every instance, it's perfect. Jesus Christ. He is the answer to all things, even if that doesn't really make sense out of a way of understanding it. It doesn't seem grammatically correct when we say things like God is, right? And he's the great I am. And just saying the answer is Jesus Christ, it's, sometimes well, what? One of the things he said at one point? No, he is the answer. And that is how we have good company and how we are good company on both ends to the best that we can be and do, right? Have is by just doing all that we can do to the best that we can do. Like I said earlier, doing all that we can to do all that we can to follow Jesus Christ. And no human being will ever be perfect at that. And sometimes even if we're doing a really, really good job at it, it might not look like we're doing all that great at it. Seriously. But there you go. Okay, company for company sake. There you go. That's one of the reasons I love poodles so much too. There's a lot of different reasons for a lot of different dog breeds. There's breeds for a reason, right? They created different breeds by choosing specific dogs to mate with other dogs, selected by human beings. That's how that's happened with our modern dog breeds for different purposes. And one of the biggest purposes, if you will, behind breeding poodles to get them to what they are nowadays is dogs that love to please their owners. And that's amazing. They listen very, very well. They're statistically the second smartest dog breed currently, as far as what they've measured, second to border collies. Those are extremely smart dogs. I like border collies a lot too. I mean, there's a lot of dog breeds that I do like as well, but poodles are my favorite. As the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, with a fourth of us being In the Image Clothing Company poodles, that probably makes sense, right? And you might just know that depending on how much you know about who we are here under In the Image Clothing Company. But they're amazing company. Poodles are dogs that more commonly than most any other dog, end up being what type of breed is used for service animals and therapy animals, right? Companions like that, because of how, like, if we can use the word, engrossed they are in their owner. They want to just please you. And a lot of dogs are like that, but in such a higher degree than most every other dog. Poodles are, they call them clingy dogs. I mean, that's a word they gets put on poodles often because they just want to be right by your side. They want to be your good company, is what I'm saying right here. The reason I'm discussing it the way that I am, correlating it with this episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. So, yeah, poodles, we'll have some beautiful dogs. And, bringing people together, the reason poodle parade events are such a thing, well, there's a lot of reasons. Advertisement for what we do under In the Image Clothing Company, for our product sales so that we can make a living. Even though I don't put the focus on money, we need it, to be able to do what we do, and just to be able to do what we do in life as well, in ways, right? But a big thing is the way that we can bring people together, get people in nature in ways that they wouldn't otherwise really even know how to, or just do on their own, but then the dogs just bring so much love. I mean, dogs, right? Man's best friend. That's what they get called so often. And poodle parade events, a lot of what it is like I say when I discuss them, which I usually mention them, at least I have been lately, in the intros of videos on the main side of In the Image Clothing Company and here on In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Not only do I mention a lot of the things we do under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, but I'll mention Poodle Parade events because they will be so big for just having this like family reunion almost. That's what it'll be, a lot of it, Even if I gave no information on letting dogs stay natural at certain Poodle Parade events, just having fun, hanging out, being in nature, and just the enjoyment the dogs will have and we will have, it'll just be a lot of good company, so we need to do all that we can to be that good company though as well. Yeah. So there you go. Okay. That's where we'll leave this episode 161 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Today's the 29th of September 2025. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. And yeah, company for company's sake. Yeah, I'll play a little bit of Red. The guitar, he might be slightly out of tune, but I think I'll just stay within that C chord shape. At least, play a little bit of something. He's more playable now and sounds better actually as well. Unorthodox and untraditional, as it is, as we are, so expect it. Some weird stuff. Expect us to just be as authentic as we can be, because that's what we're all searching for anyway. Sometimes it can come as a big shock, but that's where we're going to have the best company, is the closer and closer we can get to authentic. And just to be very clear again, all that means, and the way we find how to get there and know when we really are being authentic, is not trying. Being exactly who God designed us to be, and that's me.